Today we're going to cover the drafting workbench. So this is what your assignment is going to look like. But before I start the lecture, I want to go back to the beginning. Here's an example of a student report card from a few years back. So I'm going to send you a report card in the next few weeks showing you your total score. And here's the grade scale for an A, B, C, or D. And all assignments will be due at the end of the semester. It's not the same date as listed here for us. Okay, so everything will be due at the end of the semester. Okay, so far we worked on the angle bracket, the clamp assembly, the motor base assembly. Here's an extra credit assignment, the lifting assembly. And for today's assignment, you're going to be working on the drafting workbench. Our next lecture will cover FTNA, functional tolerancing and annotation, using model-based definition. So this is what we use instead of a lot of large companies use this, attaching dimensions and text onto the 3D model instead of creating a drawing. And finally, our last class session, we will cover digital mockup, where we do a clash analysis. We check to see if any parts are hitting each other and to correct the mistake. This is very common, especially in automotive, where you do a section cut in 3D to analyze to see if any parts are hitting each other, like electrical hitting interior, or even carpet hitting the or clashing with the structural part of the vehicle or the interior parts of the vehicle, for example. You want to make sure things are not clashing. Okay, so at the end we'll learn how to generate a clash report. All right, so we're going to go back to the drafting workbench or drafting lecture. Okay, so you are to create a drawing like this one. Here's an example from one of my old students. Okay, so you're going to create a title block and border, parts list, an exploded view, a top assembly, sub-assemblies, and you're going to create the detailed drawings of the individual parts, the base plate, the bracket, the support, the shaft, and the knuckle. We do not make drawings of the hardware, the bolts, nuts, and washers. Before internet, before 3D modeling, we would have to provide a final page listing all the specifications for the bolts, nuts, washers, and loose hardware. Nowadays we don't, since everything can be ordered online, either through McMaster, Carlane, and other websites. They follow the specifications set by the ANSI standards or ASME standards, the American standards, and we can just order them using their part number. And when we order the part, it lists all the specifications it meets, the American standards and also military standards. All right, so let's take a look at some other examples from other students. Okay, so I'm going to show you examples from other students on their drafting assignment. I recommend that you use a D size sheet that's 22 by 34 inches. If you want to use a B, 11 by 17, go for it. It's going to be a little bit tighter on the sheet size. And once again, you do not create drawings for the hardware, bolts, nuts, washers, etc. Okay, so once again, here are examples. Here's what something turned in a few years back. If you want to follow this as your example. Okay, so generate a title block, generate a bill of material, which we'll go over in the lecture. Exploded view with balloons, calling out each part. We have an assembly, sub-assemblies, and details. I'm not going to be picky when it comes to the grading. I'm not going to check to see if you got every single dimension. I'm not going to check to see if you labeled everything correctly. What I want to see is that you use the commands in the drafting workbench. I want to see that you know how to generate a title block and border, a bill of material parts list, how to create an exploded view, assembly views, how to generate front views, side views, bottom views, etc., and isometric views. Okay, so here's more examples. So I am going to email you this PDF file of examples from previous students that you can follow. If you want to follow one of them or a combination, or if you want to do your own thing, you're welcome to. And again, the drafting assignment is one of those where I'm not picky when it comes to the grading. I just glanced to see that you generated your views, your isometric views, exploded views, your parts list or bill of material, and the detail views, and that you generated dimensions. I'm not going to check to see if you missed a dimension or if you misspelled a word. I'm just going to quickly glance at it for maybe 10 seconds. All right, looks like the student completed the entire assignment, full credit, and move on to the next student to grade. All right, so once again, I'm going to email you this PDF file with previous student examples. All right, so let's move on to the lecture. Okay, so Drafting Workbench, Lecture 3. Okay, so you should already be familiar with the Drafting Workbench from CAT 31. We're just going to review some of the concepts you did learn in CAT 31 and do some more advanced concepts in the Drafting Workbench. Okay, so quick review. If you want to go into the Drafting Workbench, go to Start, Mechanical Design, and click on the Drafting Workbench. Looks like a little workbench with the gear on top. Okay, so when you start a drawing, it's going to follow some standard, whether it's an ANSI, American National Standards Institute, or ASME, American Society of Mechanical Engineers, or an ISO standard, the International Standards Organization, or even a Japanese standards, the JIS standards. And you're going to pick a sheet size. You're going to discourage using, if I haven't so, I'm discouraging you from using a size. A size is 8.5 by 11. I rarely use A size. I typically use B, 11 by 17, or D, which is 22 by 34. And if I need a larger size, then I'll move up to a larger size. Okay, so once this window pops up, you can modify. You can click on Modify to change the standard or the sheet size. I just hit OK, and I manually change the sheet size. All right, so let's go on to the next slide. So let me walk you through how to get into how to create a new drawing and how to change the properties of your sheet. Okay, you just simply right click on the sheet, Properties, and you can change the sheet size. Okay, so let me walk you through that. Okay, so this is the part we're going to be making some views from. Okay, so if I'm ready to create a drawing for this part, I'll go to Start, Mechanical Design, Drafting. Okay, and I'm just gonna instead of clicking Modify, I'll just go ahead and click Modify, just to show you that you can change the standard. Do you want to use ANSI, American Standards, ASME, American Standards, ISO, International Standards, or the JIS standards, which is the Japanese standards. And then you can pick what sheet size you want to use. So you can do it from here if you like. Or you can simply hit OK and change it in the properties. Either way will work. Okay, I'm going to hit OK. And I'll just have it generate a sheet. So this is sheet 1. So typically I'll do it from here. If I want to change the sheet size, I'll just right click Properties. Okay, and then from here you can change the sheet size. One thing you cannot do is change the standard. But from here you can change the sheet size. Typically I'll use B size or D. If I'm dealing with something, large assemblies like an aerospace, like working on a fuselage for example, I'll jump up to an E or even an F size, larger size. And we have also a J size, which is a 36 by, you can change the length. So I've used J size for electrical wiring for EV, for electric vehicles. There's a lot of wiring obviously in electrical vehicles, and some of the harnesses that we modeled were as long as 15 feet long. So we had to customize our own sheet size, 36 inches by 15 feet, just so that we can draw our wire harness and the flat linearly at full scale, at actual size. So it's just easier to manufacture. Okay, also this is where you change your angle projections. So most American companies follow third angle projection. So when you project from a front view to create your side view, top view, in this case we're going to be using, for this class we'll be using third angle. If you want to use first angle, go for it. So quite a few other countries use first angle projection. Okay, so I'll leave it at B size. For this part, once I go into the assemblies, I'll jump up to a D size. So I'll stay in B size, okay. So this is 22 by 34. All right, so if I want to create a front view of my part, I can go to front view, right? Go to front view. Then I go to my part and click on any flat surface or any plane. Okay, so you should be familiar with the compass here. This is to rotate, right? So you can use the arrows to rotate. There's also a rotation option here where you can control. There's also this little green circle here that you can just rotate about. You can also change the increments of how much you can rotate by right-clicking. Okay, I'll just leave it the way it is. I'm going to deviate a little bit from the lecture notes, but I'll call this my front view. And I'll just click in space to generate, or click on the center blue button here to generate my view. I'll just click in space so I can generate the view. There it is. Okay, so let's go back to the lecture notes. Okay, so we already talked about right-clicking on a sheet and how to change your sheet size or angle projection. Okay, if you want to view both your model and your drawing at the same time, side by side, you can go to Window, Tile Vertically. Okay, so if you want to see both windows at the same time. Okay, so currently I'm in the drafting workbench. Let me go over to the 3D model. Okay, so if I wanted to see both the 3D model and the drawing side by side, I can go to Window, Vertical. Okay, so there it is. Comes in handy. So it's easy to go back and forth if you're going to generate more views, which we'll do in a few minutes. Okay, so that is once again Window, Tile, Vertically. Okay, so we already generated our front view. We're going to go ahead and generate an isometric view. And I already went over the compass, right? You can use the compass to rotate, to flip. You can also use the green button to rotate it. Okay, before we create our isometric view, I want to go over this. Here's an axis. This is the axis of our part. So if we go back to our 3D model, we'll see that our axis is here. And I prefer to turn this off. You can go to Tools Options, Drafting Workbench, and go to the General tab and turn this off. I typically will have it off. So you can uncheck this and this will go away, your axis for your part, for the 3D model. Okay, so let me demonstrate that real quick. I'm going to quickly model another part. So it's just warning me that it's going to create a new window session for a brand new part. Oh, it just took me back to this part. I got to start again. So I'm already in part design, so it should recognize that I want to create a new part since I'm already in part design over here on the right. Click it. Yep, so it recognizes that I want to create a new part if I go to the same workbench, the part design. Okay, so I'm going to model something real simple, but I'm going to model it away from my axis. Now you may not see an axis, but it's where your XYZ planes intersect. That's where your, or I should say your origin is at, right? Okay, so I'm going to model something away from the axis. Way far away. So a good example is in aerospace, this would be towards the front of the aircraft, like maybe the nose or the fuselage, and then back here you'll have the rudder, right? So typically you'll, or I should say every time, the rudder is going to be way far away from the origin of the aircraft coordinate system. So again, the fuselage nose would be somewhere here, and way out there will be the rudder of the aircraft at the tail section of the aircraft. Okay, so just to save time, I'm not going to constrain the sketch. I'll create a pad real quick, doesn't matter what thickness, okay. And watch, I'm going to bring in this view. Okay, so let's go back to drafting, and I'll just create a view and I'll delete it in a few minutes just to get the point across about this axis. So currently I have it off, it's not showing. I'll turn it back on in a few seconds. All right, so let's go ahead and generate a new view. So front view of this rudder I just modeled up real quick. Click on any planar surface or plane to generate the view. Okay, and click in space. All right, so let me go ahead and maximize my window here. Okay, so currently we don't see that axis. I modeled the part larger than what I wanted, but let's go ahead and get this point across here. Okay, so you don't see an axis. Let's go back. So mine is currently off. Let me go ahead and turn it on. Okay, so I'm going to go to Tools, Options. And I'm going to go to the Mechanical Design, open up that branch, go to Drafting, go to General. Notice mine is currently off. Let me go ahead and turn it back on. Hit OK. And I want you to notice there's the axis. So this gets annoying when you're working on a component, part of an aircraft, and you have that axis on. You're going to have these large, long frames, and it's going to show up on the view that it's currently active. So see how this is red? This is currently active. If I go to my other view and I double click it, now you're going to see the axis show up on this one. So it only shows up on the view that's currently active. Now you can see this is no longer active. If I double click on the frame on this one, it'll be the active view, and it'll show the axis. By the way, you can also activate by double clicking here on the tree. So if I wanted to go back to the other one, double click, and now this view will be active. Oh, let's double click again. There it is. Okay, so again, you can double click from here if you want to make the other view active. Okay, so this gets annoying. So one thing you can do is just turn it off. Go to Tools, Options once again. Tools, Options, and you can turn off that axis. Hey, I don't want to see that little blue axis. Turn it off, and okay. Okay, so let me go ahead and delete this. All right, another thing I wanted to get across is also not only does the part have an axis, so does the sheet. So let's say I wanted to copy this text onto the sheet. So currently the text is part of this view frame. As you can see, as I move this view frame, the text will move with it. Okay, so let's say I wanted to put text on the sheet. Okay, so first I'm going to double click on the sheet. Double click. And now the sheet is the one that's active. Let me click in space to deselect. Notice how the sheet here is blue now in the tree. So that's active, not the view. Okay, so I'm going to take this text, right click copy, and I'm going to paste it onto the sheet. Now the question is, where is it going to land? Is it going to land here? It's going to land off the sheet. Let's find out. I'm going to right click on the sheet and paste that text. So I'm copying the text and I'm going to paste it onto the sheet. Where's it going to land? Bam, it lands down here. Now how come it didn't land in the same location as it is here? And the reason is it's going to land with respect to the axis of the sheet. So for the part here, the axis is right here. And the text, here it is with respect to the axis. Well, it's going to do the same thing for the sheet. Here's the axis, or the origin of the sheet is at this corner. And the text is going to land in the same location with respect to its axis, just as it was here with respect to the axis of the part. Okay, so keep that in mind. The sheet has its own axis. Let me go ahead and delete this. I just use the delete button on the keyboard. All right, so let's continue on. All right, so let's go ahead and create an isometric view. Okay, so I'm going to go to isometric view. Go to my part. All right, so before you click on any plane or planar surface to generate your view, first position it. If you want this as your ISO view, position it, and then you click on a flat surface or a plane. Let me follow the ISO here, ISO view orientation here. There it is. And I'll click on a planar surface or a plane. Either one will generate my view. All right, click on the center button or click in space to generate the view. And typically you'll place your ISO view most of the time on the upper right corner or wherever you have space available. Okay, so that's ISO view. Okay, so let's say you wanted to change properties on one of your views. Let's say you wanted to show center lines, axes, hidden lines. Okay, so all you have to do is right click on that view, on the tree or on the frame, right click, properties, and you can have center lines, axes, hidden lines generated or be generated. Okay, so I can right click on the frame or here right click on the front view, go to properties. And if you want to generate hidden lines, turn on hidden lines. If you want to turn off fillets, typically you don't want to show fillets, the round tangency fillet lines. I want to see center lines and axes. By the way, also, if you want to lock a view, let's say you're finished creating your drawing, your dimensions, and for some reason you want to lock this view so you don't later on mistakenly delete something or alter something, you can always lock the view here. All right, so I'm going to hit apply and keep your eye on the view. 3, 2, 1, apply, and it's going to generate center lines, hidden lines, axes, as you can see. And hit OK. Okay, so as you can see, it generated hidden lines. That's a hidden line. We have an axis line, and center marks. And by the way, if you want to alter the size of let's say the center mark, you can click on it and you can use these grips to change the length. If you just want to change only one, you can hold on to the control key if you just want to change one. So currently I'm holding on to the control button on the keyboard if you just want to change one at a time. Okay, so you do have that option. If you let go of the control button, then it's going to move all of them at once. Okay, so all right, let's continue on with the lecture. Okay, so once again, you can turn on your hidden lines, center lines, axes. Typically, you'll turn off those fillet tangency lines. Also, if you want to change the scale, if you want your view to be larger or smaller, you can change the scale here by inputting either fractions, ratios, or decimals. Okay, so you can change the size of your view here in scale. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and do that. Let's say I wanted to change this to a larger size. Right click on the frame, properties. If you want to make it double the size, you can either go 2 to 1, 2 divided by 1, or simply the decimal. 2 divided by 1 is just 2. And apply. And it'll change it to a larger size. If you want half size, you can do 1 to 2, 1 divided by 2, or the decimal, 0.5. 0.5 is half. Apply in 3, 2, 1, apply. And there it is. Okay, I'll go ahead and leave it as a scale 1, full size. If you can fit it there at full size, it's as preferred, actual size, but sometimes you want to increase the size or make it smaller so you can fit it inside your sheet. All right, so let's move on. Okay, so if you want to create if you want to add more sheets, you can go to Insert, Drawing, Sheet. If you want to add another sheet. Now in my case, I don't need a second sheet, but let me go ahead and add one anyway. So you can either click the button here. So here's the icon to insert a new sheet, or you can go to Insert, Drawing, Sheets, and New. And it'll generate a second sheet. All right, let me hit undo. I can either hit Control Z. Oh, I guess you cannot undo a second sheet. Let me go ahead and delete it. It's like, are you sure you want to do this? Yes, and okay. So sheet number 2 is gone. All right, so let's go back to the lecture notes. Okay, now let's do a projection view. Okay, so if you want to generate a side view, top view, obviously I'm not following the same views as in the lecture here. On the lecture notes, I chose this as my front view, but rotated 180. Okay, so typically your front view should be the view that gives you the most information. Okay, so if I want to generate a side view and a top view off of this reference view, first you need to make it red, double click, make the frame red, or you can double click here on the tree. All right, so let's go ahead and project. Project. So again, it's going to project off of the view that's active, which the one that's red. And when I project, it's also going to use the same settings here of showing hidden lines, center lines, etc. Okay, now let's go to the generate a top view. Okay, so we're going to project once again off of the view that's active, the one that's red. And it will also create center lines, hidden lines, axes, right? It'll follow the same settings as your reference view. All right, so we can go ahead and center it. All right, let's move on to the notes. Okay, now let's say we wanted to do a section view. Okay, so section view. Okay, so let's say I wanted to show a section view cutting right through the middle of this part. First, you got to activate the part. Activate it. Now, we don't need a section view for this part. The 3 views is more than enough to show all the features of the part. But let's say you wanted to generate a section view to show what's inside the view, or the solid, I should say. Okay, so we're going to do a section view. Okay, so click on it. Okay, so make sure it's red. As you can see, it's red. Okay, let me zoom in. Okay, so I want to go right down the middle. So I'm going to track that center of the hole, that center point of the hole. Okay, go slightly beyond. Then I'm going to click. I'm going to cut down the middle. And you need to double click to generate. Okay, so if you just simply click, it's not going to generate the section view. You need to double click. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and double click. So you have to double click to generate the section view, as you can see. And there it is. Section views, hidden lines are not allowed in a section view, but center lines and axes are. Okay. So that's a section of view. If you need to make changes, you can always double click on your cutting line or cutting plane. You can always double click on it. If you want to extend it or shorten it, you can do that. All right, let's move on to the next one. And let's do an auxiliary view. Okay, so I'm going to open up a different part for this one. Now let me go ahead and insert a new sheet. This is obviously I want to create a second part here on a second sheet, but let's go ahead and insert a new sheet. Okay, so notice it generated the second sheet as sheet 3. It recognized that we used sheet 2 before, the one that we deleted previously. It's okay, you can always right click properties and change the name. You can right click properties and say, hey, I'm going to call this sheet 2. So since CATIA recognized that we previously had a sheet 2, it generated a sheet 3. So it was thinking it didn't want to duplicate a sheet 2. That's okay, we can go ahead and change it here and hit OK. All right, by the way, before I do an auxiliary view, you can always reorder the sheets, by the way. So if you have a bunch of sheets and you need to reorder them, you can always right click, go to reorder, and you can only reorder and drop it below an existing sheet. Okay, so all you have to do is hover over the sheet you want it to be placed afterwards. Okay, I'll just go ahead and hit escape. I just wanted to show you that's how you reorder. Once again, just simply right click. So if I wanted to place the sheet below sheet 1 below sheet 2, you can just right click, reorder, and click on the sheet that I wanted to go after. Click on it and see it reordered. Now we have sheet 2 and then sheet 1. Okay, let me do it over again. I want to reorder sheet 2 so it's second instead of first. Right click, reorder, and click on the sheet you want it to come right after. Click, and it reorders it. All right, comes in handy. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open up this part, which has an angled surface. Okay, as you can see. Okay, typically when you have a part like this, you have to create an auxiliary view. All right, so let's go ahead and generate a front view for this part. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and create a front view. And I'm going to go to this part that I just opened up. This happens to be one of the parts that I use for AutoCAD, CAD 5. Okay, so let's create our front view. Okay, click in space to generate the view. Okay, so first make sure it's red, which it is. The frame is red. If it's not, double click on it, turn it red, it's active. Okay, so if we're going to do an auxiliary view, a view looking down the hole or normal to the surface. Okay, so, oh, I'm in the wrong one. Okay, so this is auxiliary view. Okay, an auxiliary view is a view other than a right side view or top view or anything projected at a 90-degree angle. So top, low, right side, left side are all projected at a 90-degree angle. In other words, vertically or horizontally. So auxiliary view, we're going to go other than vertical or horizontal. Auxiliary view. Okay, so just guesstimate where you want your line of rotation. I'm going to click. Then I want to be parallel to this one. So I'm going to track it, see if it tracks, and there it is. It tracks. See how it's giving me parallelism? I can always right click and say, hey, I want to go parallel to that line. So I can always right click, go parallel to it. And when you're ready to generate your auxiliary view, double click, and it'll generate that auxiliary view. All right. Let's go back to sheet 1. Okay, so that was auxiliary view. Okay, so if you want to do a detail view, instead of using this as an example, I'll use, I'll go back and use the second part here. So if I wanted to do a detail view of, let's say, the slot, let's say I wanted to dimension the slot, but the dimensions are just way too tight for this small slot. Hey, I can make my detail view first, double click on the frame, make sure it turns red, there it is. I click in space to deselect, there it is. So I can now create a detail view. Let's say I wanted a detail view of this slot so I can dimension it. Okay, click to generate the portion you want to create here, and then click in space, and the default is it'll double the size. Okay, so I want you to notice your detail view will always be double the size of your reference view. You can always change the size if you want to make it larger. So again, the default is to make it twice the size of your reference view. Hey, I'll make it, let's say, 4 times if I need to really zoom in. Okay, so I made it 4 times the size of the reference view, and I can go ahead and dimension it. And again, this is to avoid crowding dimensions in the auxiliary view. Okay, so again, sometimes you need detail views, zoom into a view as a tiny feature like this slot, this rectangular slot. Okay. Okay, printing. Let's go ahead and talk about printing. I could have saved this towards the end, but might as well talk about it now. Printing is one of the most frustrating things in not only CATIA, but any other software. You have to look at the settings, what sheet size, what type of printer are you using? Are you using an inkjet printer? Are you using a plotter? These large plotters that you see in architecture offices, for example, or large aerospace companies. Sometimes the smaller companies cannot afford to buy a large plotter, so they'll go with the inkjet printer. All right, so when it comes to printing, here's your sheet, and it's in the wrong orientation with respect to the way it's going to print. So sometimes you have to rotate it. This is to rotate. You can do a no fitting, so it's 100%. You can do a fit to page, or you can do your own scale. You can center it, so this center will center with respect to the sheet. Okay. If you want to change the sheet size, you go to page setup. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a print. So it all depends on what you have access to whether it's in the computer lab or at your office or at home. What are you going to use to print with? An inkjet, a plotter, depending on what you have access to, the settings will be a little different. Okay, so let me go to sheet 1. Let's say I wanted to do a print. So I'm going to go to printer setup. Oh, my mistake. File print, my mistake, file print. Okay, so notice I have the wrong orientation. So if I want to rotate it 90 degrees, there it is, it rotates it. If I want, hey, no fitting 100%, like, whoa, yeah, the sheet is too small if you want to print this at full scale. So currently my sheet size, most likely it's at 8.5 by 11. So I can go to page setup and say, hey, instead of a letter 8.5 by 11, I want to go up to a B size. Okay, so this is the Japanese standard B size, or maybe I could be able to go to legal. I think legal is 8.5 by 11. My mistake, 11 by 17. Hit OK. Oh, not exactly. So let me go back to page setup. So again, this, depending on what you're hooked up to as far as printers, it'll limit you as to what you can pick on sizes. If you were connected to a plotter, these large plotters, you would have an A size, B size, C size, D size option. I'll go to B size, Japanese standards. Okay, hopefully that's 11 by 17. Nope, it's still too large. Let's see. Fit into page. That's at 83%. No fitting. All right, so in this case, I would have to say fit into page so I can be able to print. Then I can always hit preview. And it's giving me a preview of what it's going to print. Okay, so we can spend quite a bit of time going over printing. I just want you to be aware that it can be a headache when you're first learning how to print in CATIA, whether it's in the computer lab, at home, or at work. And if you're going to be printing multiple pages at one time, you can go to multi-documents and say, hey, I want to print all of them. And hit preview. And here I can go to sheet 1, sheet 2, right? And you can print one at a time. If you like, you can click printer, then go to the next one and hit print. Or you can just simply hit OK and it'll print all the sheets. Okay. And that's as far as I'm going to go with printing. Just a warning, it can be frustrating at first when you're first printing, and that's with any software, AutoCAD, CATIA, SolidWorks, etc. All right, so if you want to add your own center marks, you do have this icon. If CATIA didn't automatically generate center marks for you when you change your options, you can always create your own center marks with this icon. Okay, so let's say, for example, it did not generate the center mark. I'm going to go ahead and, by the way, you can also hide items. Let's say instead of deleting this item, let's say I wanted to just hide it. Let's say I wasn't sure if I wanted the center mark. And instead of deleting, you can hide it. You can go to hide. There it is. I hid that center mark. You can always click on the no show. So here we can swap to no show. You can always call it back. There it is, the center mark. It's in the hidden layer. Okay, so let's say it didn't generate a center mark. So we do have that option, right? So let me go ahead and get that toolbar. Here it is. And I can click center mark and click on an arc or circle and it'll generate my center mark. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the next topic or the next slide. All right, so let's talk about dimensions. Now, CATIA, depending on, I guess, which, if you have the English version or French version, depending on which, when you downloaded CATIA, if you downloaded American, US, or let's say French, or let's say Mandarin, Chinese, depending on what language you download the software, most likely your CATIA at home is going to, and also the computer lab here on campus, it's going to give you your dimensions in feet, inches. Now, when you go work for a company, everything will already be set up. You'll have drawing template for millimeters and one for inches. 99.9% of the time, if you're working in automotive or aerospace, you'll be working in either inches or millimeters. You'll be working in feet inches if you're working in architecture. Okay, so for us it's mechanical, it's always going to be millimeters, which is the first choice, or the third choice here is inches. And again, most likely your computer, your CATIA at home will default to feet inches. Okay, so let's throw in some dimensions. Okay, I'm just going to randomly throw in some dimensions. Okay, so to dimension, look for this one. You can go to auto dimension here. You still have to click on the elements, or you can go the long way if you want to do linear dimension, angular, radius, diameter. I prefer to go the long way. Some of you are going to prefer to just use the simple icon here, which it'll auto detect if it's an arc for a radius, a circle for diameter, or a length if it's a linear length. Okay, so I'll just use the simple version here. Okay, I'm going to just throw in some dimensions. Okay, let's say I wanted an overall length. And you can already see it's giving me these awkward dimensions. And again, it's giving me dimensions in feet, inches, which I don't want. So I'm going to recommend that you can either leave it alone if you like with these units. But I'm going to recommend you wait till the very end to change your dimensions. So I'll just throw in a few dimensions. I'm not going to do all of them because of time. And let me go ahead and throw in one more for diameter. Okay, so once you throw in your dimensions and hey, you don't like these dimensions, I don't want feet inches, I want millimeters, or I want inches, how do you do that? So you can change it one at a time if you like, which is the long way. You can go click on the dimension you want to alter, and you can right click properties. You can right click properties. This is one option. And let's see, I'm going to look for units here. Oh, here it is. On the first tab, the value tab, instead of feet inches, hey, I want millimeters. And hit apply and keep an eye on your screen. 3, 2, 1, apply. So if you want millimeters, there it is, millimeters. If you want to change decimal places, you can do it here in precision. If you want to go to inches, hey, I want inches, go to the third option, inches, and apply. Okay, so this is 2.25 inches. Okay, so this is the long way of doing it by doing one at a time. By the way, you can also change it from up here. You can select the dimension, which I already have one selected, and you can change it from here, millimeters. Oh, want to go to inches. Okay, so in this case, I want to go to inches. On your assignment, I think it'll be millimeters. So what you can do is imagine you have already dimensioned all the views. You're ready to change your dimensions to inches in this case. Okay, so we're going to go to the drop down here, but first select everything. I'm just going to Windows select everything. So you can see everything's been selected. Then I'm going to go here to the drop down and say, hey, I want inches. 3, 2, 1 inches. And there it is. It gives me inches. Okay, by the way, if you want to add a little leader in front of your text, you can always click on the dimension. And you can either go to properties or go here to add a little tiny leader here. There it is. Just looks better. Same thing with this one. And I want to add a leader in front of it. And I can use this manipulator to extend it. So you can use manipulators to extend. Also, if you want to add text, you need to click on these red triangles. If you don't see these red triangles, I'm going to show you in a later slide how to turn on all these manipulators. So let's say we had two holes with the same diameter. I can always click on this red triangle and type in 2x, 2 capital X, and OK. Okay, so that's how you add text. Just click on the red triangles. If I wanted to remove the double arrow and just go down to one arrow, so in this case I don't need two arrowheads. Okay, so I'm going to go to right click properties and I'm going to turn off one of them. So right click properties on the dimension, and let me look for the arrows. Let's see, tolerance. If you want to add a tolerance, a plus or minus tolerance, this is where you go for tolerance. So here are my arrowheads. So I'm going to turn off the second arrowhead and hit apply. Okay, so keep an eye on the arrowheads, apply, and it will remove one of them. Okay, there it is, removed it. If you want to add a tolerance, let's go back to tolerance. So if you want to add a plus or minus tolerance, you can do it here. Okay, I want to add a 0.1 tolerance in each direction. Apply, keep an eye on the dimension. Notice it added a tolerance. Oh, I forgot a minus. Forgot to put a minus. And apply. So if you want to add a tolerance, hey, ½ inch plus or minus 0.10, for example, just go here and add a tolerance. Okay. Or if you want to add a max and minimum tolerance, you can also do that from here. Or I can just go back and remove the tolerance, apply, and that'll remove it. All right. So another thing that you have here also, if you want to add or remove the lead, that little tiny lead we added in front of the text, you can do it from here. Also, sometimes you want to remove extensions. On this one, it doesn't have extensions, but you can also remove extension lines. You can do it from here. Remove extension lines. If you want to add text below, so if you wanted to add information with respect to this scallop here, you can add more text if you like. You can do it here, below, top, front, or behind. Instead of using the red triangles that I showed earlier, you can do it from here. Also, if you want to add symbols, there it is. So you can always click in the window where you want to add the symbol. It already has a diameter symbol on ours, right? You can add symbols here. Depth, counterbore, countersunk, etc. You can do it from here. Okay, if you want to change the font, typically you don't change the font because it's following a standard. In this case, it's following in I believe it was an ANSI, American Standard. And if you wanted to add a frame, like a basic frame, or to make it a basic dimension, if you wanted to add GD&T, if you were using GD&T tolerances, if you wanted to add a frame around it, you can do it from here. Yeah, I want to add a frame. Apply. Okay, this is something you would see in a GD&T class. It's going to add a frame around my text. For us, we wouldn't use it here. Just wanted to show you how to apply it. Okay, so, and the others are not that important, the other tabs. That's if you want to add color, graphic colors, for example. All right, so let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so once again, you can individually change each dimension. You can change the units by going to the value tab. So first you right-click properties, go to the value tab, change your units, inches, feet, millimeters, and decimal places. You can go to precision for decimal places. All right, now manipulators. So if you wanted to turn on these manipulators, these little white squares and the white arrow, it's hard to see here, and the red triangles, you have to go into Tools Options, go to Drafting, Manipulators, and you want to turn all these on. Okay, so after you created your dimension, all these manipulators will be available to you if you checked all these on. If you turn these on, the manipulators will show up as you're creating the dimension. So we don't need to have these on as you're creating the dimension. We'll just wait after the dimension is created. Just turn these on, so it'll give me access to all these manipulators. Okay, so again, if you want to be able to use these manipulators. As you can see, if you hit the control key, it'll only move one. If you let go of the control key, it'll move both, as you can see. Okay, so we have these manipulators. And also, if you want to add text, you have the red triangle. So all you simply have to do is go to Tools Options and turn on those manipulators. Okay, so we're going to go over to the Mechanical Design, Drafting, and go to Manipulators. There's Manipulators. And most likely in your case, these are going to be off. So mine are all on. Okay, and hit OK. And it'll turn on the manipulators. Okay, back to the lecture. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, and I'm going to mention this on the assignment video. Your text is going to snap to a grid. Okay, so your drawing has a grid. And if you don't want it to snap, you got to turn these off. Okay, so you go back to the Drafting Tools Options, Drafting. And anytime you move text or move a view, it's going to snap. So you want to turn these off. So there's this one here under Dimensions. Look for the arrow, the move arrow, and turn off snap. And there's also another one under Annotation and Dress Up. Also, when you're moving text or maybe a view, or I should say a bill of material table, for example, it's going to snap to the grid in the background of the drawing. So you may want to turn this off. If it's on and you want to leave it on, but you want a freedom to move without snapping, you can always hold on to the Shift key as you're moving something, like text or dimension. All right, so mine is currently off. Let me show you the grid. There it is. So there's a grid. I can tell you about half of the drafters or engineers or designers prefer to have the grid on. I'm one of those that like to have the grid on. Others dislike this grid. It just seems like it's too crowded here on the screen. So about half of you will prefer to turn off the grid. I'm going to turn it on. And I'm going to go to Tools Options. And I'm going to turn on those snaps. Yours are probably on. Okay, so I'm going to go to Dimension. So yours are most likely the snap is on to move dimensions. And also if we go over to Annotation, that's for notes. And turn on the snap and OK. So watch what happens with the snap currently on. Anytime I move a dimension, oh, sure, the dimension is free to move. Maybe the snap is really small in size. So, okay, this seems to be fine. Let's see when I move text. Okay, there it is. That's what I wanted. I wanted you guys to see the snapping. See how it's snapping? I'm actually surprised it didn't snap on the dimension. Maybe when I create a new dimension. Let's see when I create a new dimension if it snaps. Okay, it doesn't seem to snap for dimensions. Okay, so I was wrong on that. But it does snap on text. So as I'm moving the text, it's snapping. So you can either turn off those snap options, which I mentioned earlier, or you can hold on to the Shift key on the keyboard, and now I'm free to move. It's not snapping anymore. If I let go of the Shift key, it snaps. I think with views, it will not snap. Okay, with views, it's okay. So that's another correction I have to make. With views, it will not snap, but it will with text. And if you have tables, like a parts list table. All right, so let's go move on to the next one. Okay, I did show you how to add a frame. You can also do it from up here. Again, on the previous slide, I show you how to add a frame or how to add symbols. Under Properties, you can always right-click Properties on the dimension or text to add frames around it or add symbols. You can also do it from here, from these icons. Okay, so you do have the icons on top. Okay, so I click on text, you know what? I don't see it up here. I was expecting, I do see the symbols. If you want to add symbols, for example. Okay, so let's say for this, I wanted to add a depth. Let me go ahead and make some room here. This is just way too tight. Okay, so let's say I wanted to add a depth symbol. Let's say the hole didn't go through. In this case, it does. Obviously, it goes all the way through. We can tell by the hidden lines. But let's say the hole doesn't go all the way through. We wanted to add a depth. Okay, so one way to do it is by just attaching text to this. Okay, so this is the easiest way, is adding text. I can just add text to my dimension. Click on it so it'll link to it. So if this moves, the text will move with it. Okay, so you can see it's already adding text, giving me a preview. And from here, I can go to the drop down and say, hey, I want a depth. Okay, once again, if you want to add a symbol, click here and you can add depth, for example. Okay, so there's depth. I'm going to go space and let's say, misclicked, space, and type in 0.5, for example. 0.5 inches. And okay, so that's one option. Okay, so now if I move this text, if I move the dimension, the text will move with it. Okay, you can also align the text. If you don't like it where it's at, you can always see how I'm snapping? Let me click the shift key. If I want to center it more with the diameter 0.25, there it is, and then I can let go. Click in space to deselect, and now once again, if I move my dimension, the text will move with it. You can always break the link by right clicking, and you can delete the positional link. You can always delete, or you can always replace, or you can also create from here. Okay, so if it fails to link to your dimension, you can always right click and you can add or delete or replace a link. Okay, you can do it from here. All right. And again, if you wanted to add a frame, it doesn't give me the option from up here. I'm actually surprised I don't see it. Okay, so if you want to add a frame around it for some reason, right click, properties, and you can add a rectangular frame, a circular frame from right here. Okay, go to the text tab. I'm not going to do that, so I'll just go ahead and close this. All right, so let's talk about title block and border. Okay, so title block and border. Okay, so let's say we're ready to add a title block and border. Let me go ahead and place these back in a dock toolbars, just like docking a boat or a ship. All right, so let's say we're ready to add a title block and border. So you're going to go to Edit, Sheet Background. You have to do it in the background. CATIA will not allow you to generate a title block and border on the view space. So we have to go to the Sheet Background. As far as I know, there is no icon for Sheet Background. Okay, so go to Edit, Sheet Background, and it'll turn gray. So now we are in the background. Okay, so this is where you're going to add your title block and border. Okay, notice how it added icons. So this is the title block and border, or frame and title block. You can also go to Insert, Drawing, Frame, and Title Block. Here it will not allow me to add a second, third, my mistake, a third, fourth, or fifth sheet. You have to do it in the view space. So here in the background space, you can add a sheet, but you can add a title block and border. Okay, so click here, or you can also click on that icon. Now, in our computer lab, I'm using my personal computer on this one. I'm using the student license. So maybe you're going to have the same issue depending on when you downloaded CATIA. If you downloaded all the documents, it looks like I didn't. I did not download the templates when I first downloaded CATIA into my personal computer. Okay, so from the drop down here, you would have options. You would have different styles of title blocks and borders. Actually, CATIA would give you 3 or 4 different options. You click from the option and it will also give you options to generate or delete a title block and border, or modify, or even if you change the sheet size, let's say we go from a B to an E size sheet size, you would do it from here. You would have it regenerate a larger title block and border. Okay, so let's go to the notes to show you what it looks like. So once again, you have to go to the sheet background, and it's grayed out, or I should say it's gray, the background, to insert a title block and border. And this is what it would look like once you go into insert title block and border. And once again, you cannot insert a sheet in background. You can only do it in the view, area. Okay, so in sheet background, you'll be able to add a title block and border, and you can go to the drop down and it'll give you a preview of what style of title block and border or frame it's going to give you. From here, you can create the title block and border. You can delete, you can resize it, right? You can resize it. If you change the sheet size, you can update, you can put a revision block on top, etc. So if you're having the same issues I am with the title block and border, I'm going to go ahead and email you a title block and border. If you choose to leave it out, it's okay. I'm not going to take points off if you're not able to generate a title block and border, but I am going to email you one. Okay, so what I'm going to go ahead is open. Let me go ahead and close this. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open my template, which I'm going to email you. So I'm going to email you this CATIA.cat drawing with the title block and border. So what I did is in the computer lab, I generated my title block and border, and I saved it as a CATIA file, as a template. Okay, so one thing I want you to notice, I cannot grab the frame or border. I cannot change the text. And that's because I'm in the view area. If I want to go into the background, I need to go into the background, edit, sheet background. Now that I'm in the background, I can actually select the border if I want. I can also change the text. You can see I can select items. If I wanted to change things in the title block, for example, here you would put your company name or your logo, right? You can change the text. Okay, so you can see, you can change the drawing number. Notice that it automatically generates your projection style, or type, I should say, third angle projection. Here's my sheet size, D size. So I generated this a few days ago, and it recognizes the user of the computer, which is me. Okay. All right. So what you can do is, if you want, you can create your drawing on this template, or if you want to just copy it over, I can go ahead and Windows select, Control C to copy, or right click copy. Right click copy, and now I can go to your drawing, right? You can go to your drawing 1, and in the background here, again, you want to do this in the background. I can now go Control V, or right click paste, right click and paste, and it should paste my title block and border. Now in this case, the sheet size doesn't match. This is a D. So I'm going to also create a B size so I can email it to you. So I'll send you a B size and a D size. But I just wanted to show you how you can copy and paste a title block and border from the one that from the template I'm going to email you. All right, so let's go on to the next slide. Okay, now we're going to talk about bill of material. Bill of material, it'll generate a parts list. All right. I'm going to go ahead and generate a bill of material. There are 2 options. There's the advance and the bill of material. Before I do that, let me window vertical, and it's going to show me every single session I have open. Okay, so I have all this stuff open. Okay, I don't need my template anymore. Let me turn off the template or close it. I don't need this problem 229. I'm gonna go ahead and it's like, are you sure? Nope, I don't. And I don't want to save this. Oh, by the way, when I did a copy and paste, I unintentionally created a link between this drawing and the template that I just closed. So it's giving me a warning. And let me turn this off. All right, so let me backtrack to this title block and border. Okay, I don't want to save this new file. All right, so we'll go ahead and maximize the drawing. I can just double click on the frame and it'll maximize my window here. All right, so I'm going to delete this title block and border. Okay, let's see if I can still paste it. I should have right-clicked, paste special. Okay, so when I did a paste, I should have done paste special so it doesn't link it to the drawing template. Or else you may have issues later on when you submit your drawing for check and for approval through the system. So again, I have to right-click, paste special, my title block and border. If you do paste, it'll create a link between your drawing and the drawing template, which you do not want. It'll create problems when you're ready to release the drawing through whether it's Teamcenter, Enovia, through the PLM system to release your drawing for approval, for documentation. All right, so let's generate a bill of material. Okay, so let me go ahead and hit Window Vertical. Now to generate a bill of material, I need to do it on an assembly. So let me go ahead and open up an assembly. You know what, I'll go ahead and open up the top clamp assembly. So bill of materials, typically you do it on an assembly. So here's my assembly. Okay, and I'm going to create a new drawing. I'm going to go to File, New, and I'm going to go to Drawing. So if I was creating a drawing for this assembly, okay, I'll stick to a B size. And let's say first I'll bring in I'm going to bring in my ISO view first. Okay, so let's create an ISO view. And let's go to the clamp assembly. So I'm creating a brand new drawing. All right, so first I position it. Okay, I like the position, and click on a flat surface or plane to generate the view. Okay, and click in space to generate. Okay, so let's say I'm ready to generate my bill of material. You want to do it in the background, edit, sheet background. Okay, so only in the sheet background can you generate a bill of material. Okay, so let's generate a bill of material. Once you click on it, you're going to wait and it's like, okay, yeah, I want a table. So it's just asking you what type of table you want. Okay, I'm good with this table. You can always invert so items go numerically upward, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or downward, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the invert. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and invert. So by inverting, it's going to list the items vertically upward as item 1, 2, 3, and so on. Okay, and I'm going to hit OK. And then you're going to wait and see, okay, where's my bill of material? Well, you have to tell CATIA what are you creating a bill of material of. So you have to go to your clamp assembly and click at the top of the tree. If you want to generate a bill of material for the entire clamp assembly, you have to click at the top. So you have to tell CATIA, hey, I want a bill of material for that entire assembly. Okay, now it's going to ask me to position it. Where do you want it? Okay, I'll just click here in space, click, and it'll generate my bill of material. There it is. There's my bill of material for my clamp assembly. Okay. Now, one thing it doesn't generate is item 1, 2, 3. It didn't generate items. So one thing I can do is double click. I can double click on the table. So this is similar to an Excel spreadsheet. Not as powerful as an Excel spreadsheet. It's a simple version of a spreadsheet. You can always change the size of your columns, as you can see. You have that option. You can also overwrite the text. You can double click inside the box and type in your own text if you like. Okay, so you can overwrite the text here if you like. Okay, so one thing that is missing is a list of item 1, 2, 3. You don't have to do this part, but I'm going to show you how to do it anyway. So all I have to do is simply right click on this column, right click, and I'm going to insert a new column. Okay, I want to insert a column. There it is, it inserts a new column. So I can here call it, okay, I need to add items. Item number. Now, one thing is, anytime you do text, everything should be capital letters. I don't know why CATIA is showing lowercase, but unfortunately, yeah, what I do, I just typically overwrite the text and do it in capital letters. All this lettering here should be capitalized if you're following the standards. Okay, then I would say, okay, then I'm going to call this item 1. Okay, there it is, item 1. And double click on the next one, call it item 2. Unfortunately, you cannot generate a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in one shot like you do in Excel. This is very limited. I would have to do it one at a time. Item 2, item 3, and so on. I'm not going to do them all. Just want to show you how to do it. And okay. All right, so, and you can also do an advanced one. I'm going to take a simple bill of material. Okay, you can also do a regular bill. So the first one we did was an advance. Would go back to your 3D model. You have to tell CATIA what you are going to link your bill of material to, in this case, the top clamp assembly. On our assignment video, I'll be doing it for the motor base assembly. Okay, then you have to click where you want it, click. And this, it'll give you a more complete bill of material. Oh, let me move this one downward. Notice I have snap to grid option on. I can always hit the shift key so I can freely move it. So this was the first bill of material I generated. This is the second one. Okay. All right. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay, you can also insert your own table. If you wanted to do your own bill of material manually, you can either overwrite the one that we just generated, or you can do it from scratch. You can also insert text if you like. And there's a big difference when you do an enter in text versus control enter. One of them will just skip to the next line. Another one will exit. Okay, so if you want to do your own table, here it is, table. Okay, how many rows, how many columns, and then hit OK, and then click where you want to generate it. Click where you want that table. There it is. And once again, you can always move it. And you can manually type in your text into each cell. Okay. Or again, once again, you can always override any text in the generated table. using the bill of material command. You can always overwrite. Okay. All right, and you can also add text. And again, all this is going in the background. Okay, so if you do text, all this is going to be in the background. Okay, so when you add text and you're ready to exit, if I hit enter, it'll exit the command. But if I wanted to add more lines, let's go back and double click on that text to go back into it and alter it. If you wanted to add another row of text, you have to hold on to the control key, enter, and it'll take me down to another line. Type in text, control key, enter to add more text and so on. And once you're ready to exit, you can hit OK or just hit enter on the keyboard. Okay, obviously all this would have to fit inside my title block and border, right? So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and make the sheet size. I'll make it into oh, by the way, I can't not change the sheet size here unless I do it in the view section. Okay, so let me go ahead and add my title block and border one more time. So I'll open up my template. And I'm going to go into the background, edit sheet background. So I think most of you will use its D size, but I will also send you a B size. So let's go ahead and copy this. I'm already in the background. Okay, right click copy, and I'm going to paste it into my new drawing. Okay, so again, we want to paste our title block and border in the background. So I'm going to go right click, paste special. That way it doesn't link it to my template. Okay. Okay, now I don't need all this bill of material information. So I'm going to delete some of it. I'm going to delete it. I'm going to delete this table. And I'll move my bill of material over here to the right. Typically you place it here, or you can put it at one of the corners. Okay, if you were to place it up here, then you want to invert it so that the item numbers will be going 1, 2, 3, 4 downward, or actually you want them to go inward. If you place it here, again 1, 2, 3 going inward and not outward. All right, so now let's go back to the working view layer. So go back to working view. Okay, now I can change my sheet size. Okay, I'm going to go from a B to a D size. So right click properties, and I'll change my sheet size to a D. And OK. And there it is. It fits it. And there's my assembly. Okay, I forgot to delete this text. You would have to go into the background. Notice how I cannot grab the text here. This extra text that I did for fun. I can delete it, but I have to go into the sheet background. All right, let's move on. We're almost coming to an end here. Okay, so modify links. You can link to certain items on your drawing. You don't need to link to the entire assembly. Sometimes you just want to bring some of the items in. Okay, so let's say I wanted to make a drawing of just the strap. So I'm going to go ahead and insert a new sheet. Insert a new sheet, and it should copy everything over from the previous page. Now I don't need the bill of material, the text. You don't want to keep including the bill of material on each page. You just include it at the very beginning, sheet 1. So I'm going to have to go into the sheet background and delete. So it just automatically brought everything over from the background of sheet 1, and we don't need to duplicate bill of materials. And again, you're not going to have this issue once you're working for a company. All this will be set up for you. They'll give you a drawing template to follow. Okay, let's go back to working view. Okay, so let's say I wanted to create a detailed drawing of the strap now on sheet number 2. Okay, so let's go ahead and then we'll talk about modify links. Okay, so let me first create my detailed drawing of the clamp strap and only the clamp strap. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and let me first create an ISO view, isometric view. Go to my clamp assembly. Now, one thing you don't want to do is open the clamp strap in its own window. You want to go to the assembly. You want your drawing linked to the entire assembly. You do not want to open this on its own window. Okay, so what you're going to do is select the clamp strap from the tree. Select it. So this is the only thing it's going to bring in to our drawing. And then click on a flat surface or plane to generate the view. So even though we went to our clamp assembly, we only brought in the strap, and click to generate the view. Okay, let's say you made a mistake and decide, oh, you know what? I meant to only grab the hook. Okay, so instead of the strap, let's say you wanted to do the hook, hey, you can go to right-click properties. Let me first show you the slide. If you wanted to relink it to something else, you right-click properties on the view frame, go to modify links, and you can relink it to something new. Okay, so let's say you made a mistake and wanted to link to the hook instead. Right click, go to modify links. So we're going to modify the link to this view frame. Notice currently it has the clamp strap. Let's hit preview. Currently it's linked to the clamp strap. But say, hey, no, I want to add something else. So I can click here in this box. 3, 2, 1, click in this box. And nothing happens. CATIA is waiting for you to go and pick it from the 3D model, the clamp assembly. Okay, let's say I wanted just a hook, the clamp hook here. Then let me go ahead and believe it's in this one, the end assembly, and pick it. There it is, the hook clamp. The hook clamp selected. Go back to your drawing. Okay, and there it is. It's on my list now. Okay, so now I select it. Or actually, I can select and add it to my linked window. So I'm going to say, hey, add all of them. So it'll add this hook clamp onto the list. Add all. Watch how it moves up. There it is. Notice it's in the preview here. It's showing me the hook clamp. And hit OK. And then you have to update. Okay, so you can right click update or hit the swirl icon to update, the update button. You could also done the update button. Say, oh, there it is. Oh, I forgot to unlink the clamp strap. So let's go back. Okay, so let's say you meant to only do the hook clamp and forgot to remove the clamp strap. We can go back, right click properties, and go to modify links. And once you're in modify links, you can say clamp strap, remove. It's going to remove it. So it's giving me a warning that I may change the orientation of our view because we used the plane from the clamp strap to generate the view. So it's giving me a warning. Okay. Hopefully it doesn't change the orientation. And okay. And update. It actually did change the orientation. So because the first time we went off of the orientation with respect to the clamp strap, it did change the orientation. Let's say you didn't like this orientation. Let's say you wanted to change it. Like, no, I don't like this orientation. I want it to look similar to the handout. All right, you can right click. Oh, I don't know what I did there. I think I deleted by mistake. Undo, Control Z, undo. I think I mistakenly right clicked and deleted by mistake. Yeah, I accidentally cut it or deleted it. Okay, we're back. Okay, so let's say we wanted to change the projection. So we can say modify projection plane. We can go back. Okay, go to the 3D model. And this time, instead of using a clamp strap to project off of, I'm going to use a flat surface on the clamp strap, or my mistake, hook clamp. There it is. So now I'm changing the orientation. Okay, so you can do that. So if you make a mistake, have the wrong orientation, there it is, and click on space to regenerate. All right, that's modify links. You'd be surprised how many CATIA designers are not aware of modify links. Okay, we're almost coming to an end here. Okay, overload properties. Sometimes you want to change something to a phantom line because maybe it's not part of the final drawing, but it's something that just displays how the part is used. You can overload properties. Let's go back to sheet 1. Let's say, for example, the knob was not part of the final assembly, but let's say you wanted that knob as a reference, maybe on the next assembly level, on the next drawing, higher assembly level, you were going to add the knob, for example. But you wanted to show that a knob goes there, so you would have to bring it in as a phantom. So we can right click and we can overload properties. Okay, so overload properties. This is common in when you want to show how the part is used. Okay, so let's say this will not be shown until the next higher assembly drawing. So I can click on this item and say, hey, I want to edit this. I want to edit. And instead of solid lines, I want to use phantom lines. Okay, so I'll keep the solid lines at 2. Actually, you know what? I'm going to make them thinner at 1. And I'll change it from a solid line, continuous line, to a phantom line. Let's see, I think this is the phantom line. And OK. And apply in 3, 2, 1, apply, and it changes it to a phantom. As you can see, okay, so you can overload properties. You can always undo it. You can always reset. So you can always go back and reset it, select it from the list. So you can do multiple items here if you like. We only have one. You can always reset the properties and apply, and it'll reset it back to the original. Okay, so that is overload properties. Comes in handy sometimes when you're dealing with complex assemblies and you want to at least give a preview of what's going to look like on the next higher assembly drawing. Okay, and finally, I'm going to show you how to create a scene. And I'm going to walk you through this in the video of the motor base assembly drawing. Okay, so how to create a scene. So we're going to look for the scenes toolbar in the assembly workbench. Okay, so let's say we wanted to do an exploded view, similar to what you're going to do on your assignment. Okay, so how do we create an exploded view? I'll do it on the clamp strap, and on the assignment video, I'll do it to the motor base assembly. All right, so let's say we wanted to do an exploded view. Okay, so first we need to go to the 3D model. In this case, the clamp assembly. By the way, if you want to do the drawing of the clamp assembly, you may, except you're going to get less points. So the drafting assignment is worth 200 points if you do the motor base assembly. But if you want to do the clamp strap assembly as you're drawing, there's a lot less items, so the max I'll give you is 150 points. So most of you will do the motor base, but some of you that are stressed for time, running out of time, will do the clamp strap assembly just to get enough points to get the next grade higher, an A or a B in the class. All right, so let's do an exploded view. So here is the scenes toolbar. If you don't see the scenes toolbar, chances are it's buried down here somewhere in the corner. Okay, so you have to be in the assembly workbench. If you're not, go to Start. First, double click at the very top of the tree. Double click at the top of the tree. Clamp assembly, top clamp assembly, go to Start. And make sure you are in the assembly design workbench. We are already in it. If not, click here and it'll take you to the assembly workbench. And chances are you're going to have to dig out the scenes toolbar. Okay, so if there's a toolbar that's missing, you don't see it, you're not supposed to be there, you can always drag it here by grabbing that handle, left mouse click, hold and drag. Okay, you can keep dragging toolbars out. There it is. Or you can always double click and it'll send them back into place. If you don't see a toolbar, you're looking for example, the manipulate or the move toolbar and you don't see it. Let's say you accidentally turned it off. You can always right click on any icon and bring back that toolbar. In this case, the move. Okay. All right, so here's scenes. So to create a scene, think of a movie scene. Okay, so click on the scene and the background will turn green. I'll have it automatically give it a name. It'll call it scene 1. If you want to give it your own name like exploded view, turn this off and type in exploded view. I'll just have it auto name it scene number 1 and okay. So the background is going to turn green and then on the tree it's going to add my scene. So currently we are in scene 1. Scenes, you have freedom to do whatever you want. You can move things using the compass or the move. If you want, you can use the move icons to move things around and feel free to move things. So here you're going to move one thing at a time or multiple things at a time by holding onto the control key. So you want to do an exploded view so it's easier to see all the items that make up this assembly. Okay, exploded views is to show all the little hardware that sometimes is buried in the parts and they're hard to see. Okay, so this is the reason for exploded views. Now, since this scene, actually let me rephrase that. Now, even though we have constraints on these parts, you're probably wondering, oh, I'm going to mess up the constraints if I move things. Actually, in scenes, you can do whatever you want and it's not going to affect your constraints or your assembly. You have a lot of freedom to just move things around freely and it's not going to affect your assembly. Okay? Okay, once you're done exploding things and once you're done position the orientation you want, if you want this orientation for your exploded view, okay, then you can exit just like exiting a sketch. Okay, so you can exit and you'll see that we'll be back to our clamp assembly just the way we had it originally. So your scene does not affect your constraints or the location of the parts. Don't forget to reset your compass view, reset compass. Okay, so now, and again on the next video, I'll show you how to create a scene on the motor-based assembly. And I'll move things around. Okay, so now when you're ready to create a drawing of the scene of the exploded view, go to your drawing. And just to save time, I'm going to do the exploded view on sheet 1 along with along with this ISO view, the assembly view. I'll just move this over. Okay, so I'm going to create a new ISO view of the exploded view. Go to ISO and then go to your 3D model, clamp assembly, and click on the scene on the tree, scene 1. Click on it. So it's going to bring in the exploded view, scene 1. Click on it. And then click any flat surface or plane. And it's going to bring in the exploded view, our scene 1. All right, so if you like the orientation, click in space and it'll generate. You can always go back into scene 1. You can always double click scene 1. You can always go back to scene 1 and move things around and your drawing will update. Okay, so keep that in mind. Sometimes you didn't like the way it came out on your drawing. You can always go back to scene 1 and you can move things around. I don't know, let's say you want this bushing on the other side along with the hook clamp. Okay, so I'm going to hold on to the control key and select both the hook clamp and the bushing. And then I'll just drag it with the compass. Okay, I'm good. Exit the sketch, and it'll update the drawing. First, don't forget to reset your compass. View, reset compass. Go back to your drawing, and it's going to want to update. Okay, so hit the update icon, or you can right click on that view. Notice the swirls, it's letting me know it wants to update, and you'll see these items move over to the other side. It recognized there was a change, and there it is. Okay, so you can update your scene. Okay, and finally for the drawing, once you're done, don't forget to save your drawing and also your scene. So you gotta go File, Save Management. First, let me let's go ahead and go to File, Save Management. I was gonna close the other windows of the other items. Okay, so here we have our new drawing. Make sure you save it in the same folder as your clamp assembly. So once again, here we have our drawing 3, and you may want to give it a new name. So I would go Save As. Okay, and I'm going to give it a new name. I'll call it the clamp assembly. And you want to save it in the same folder as your clamp assembly. So go to your folder where you have your clamp assembly, and you want to save it in that folder. Okay. Even though I hit save, you still have to hit OK here before it saves it. And you can see here, my drawing now is called Clamp Assembly Drawing. You can see it here. And it's going to save it in the same folder. Now we modified the top clamp assembly. If you click on it, here's your clamp assembly. We added the scene, so it's been modified to, you also have to save that. Okay, so you would have to hit save, and it'll save it, you can see. And once you hit OK, it'll save everything into your folder. Okay, and finally, just gonna go ahead and exit this. And last thing, when you want to convert a drawing to a PDF file, which is very common, right? So let's say I wanted to take this drawing and convert it to a PDF file. All you simply have to do is go to File. So once you saved your drawing, your CATIA drawing, and now you want to save a PDF file, go to File, Save As, File, Save As, and you have options here. Go to the drop down here, you have options. You can save it as a JPEG, you can save it as a .dxf file, so you can open it up in AutoCAD. You can save it as a PDF. Go to PDF, and give it its name, and you can save it as a PDF file. Okay, once you hit save, it'll generate the PDF file. So one thing that I do want you to be aware of is, to end this, is if you have 8 sheets, for example, most likely you'll have 8 sheets for your motor-based assembly, it's going to generate 8 separate PDF files. And I know most of you are going to want to put this all into one PDF file instead of a PDF file for each sheet. Okay, so if you have 8 sheets, it'll create 8 PDFs. PDF for each sheet. If you want to combine it all into one, you have to change your settings. You have to go to Tools Options, go to General, go to Compatibility, look for the Graphics Format tab, and click the option Save Multi-Sheet as a single vectorial file. Turn on this option, and instead of having all these PDF files, it'll save it all into one. Okay, so just turn this on as shown here. Okay, so this is the end of the drafting lecture, and you'll have a second video showing how to do the drawing of the motor-based assembly. It'll be a summarized version. I'm not going to do a full-on drawing for the motor-based assembly. I'll just walk you through some of the main commands and let you finish the drawing on your own. End of lecture.